The swaying nebula wasn't the kind of place where empires were made or broken. It was the kind of place where spacers went to forget their troubles, floating in zero gravity, with overpriced synthetic alcohol that tasted like regret and engine coolant. Which was exactly why Rowan Carter had chosen it. "Another round of that Andromedan whiskey," he called to the bartender, a four-armed vegan who could mix drinks while simultaneously breaking up fights. The establishment's motto, "What happens in 0G stays in 0G," was painted in 12 languages across the curved walls, though the bloodstains and scorch marks suggested not everyone got the memo. Rowan nursed his drink, watching ice crystals form and dissolve in the amber liquid. 3 weeks on Zephyria, and the water negotiations were going nowhere. The Aquafarian Combine had the desert planet by the throat, and everyone knew it. Every morning, he watched the price tickers climb higher, while refugee camps swelled with climate migrants from the outer settlements. Every evening, he filed another report to Earth's diplomatic corps that essentially said, "Still screwed. Send help, or a miracle." The bar's atmosphere shifted. Conversations died mid-sentence as a group of ex-wire naval officers floated in, their feline features set in expressions of barely contained violence. The ex-wire were proud, honor-bound, and currently very, very angry about something. "You dare show your face here after what your company did?" The lead officer, his spotted fur bristling, pointed at a table of corporate security guards wearing Aquafarian badges. "We're off duty, cat," one of the guards sneered, taking a long pull from his bottle. "Take your complaints to customer service." Rowan sighed. Bar fights in zero gravity were messy, dangerous, and absolutely not his problem. He turned back to his drink, determined to mind his own business for once in his life. That's when he noticed her. She was tucked into a corner booth, or rather, floating near what passed for a corner in the spherical bar. Definitely Xir. The pointed ears and subtle facial markings gave that away, but something was off. Her expensive clothes were disheveled. Her usually perfect mane was a mess, and she was giggling at her drink as it floated away from her grasping hands. "Come back here, you insubordinate beverage," she slurred, making swimming motions through the air that only succeeded in spinning her slowly backward. The argument between the officers and guards was escalating. Bottles were being gripped like weapons. The bartender was already reaching for the emergency gravity controls. Nothing ended a 0G bar fight faster than suddenly weighing 200 pounds again. "The Aquafarian Combine has violated 16 treaties," the ex-wire officer snarled. "Children are dying of thirst while you hoard water for profit. Supply and demand, Whiskers. Maybe if your Empress wasn't too drunk to govern." The first punch was thrown, and suddenly the air was full of flying bodies, spinning furniture, and creative profanity in multiple languages. Rowan tried to push himself toward the exit, but a stray elbow caught him in the ribs, sending him tumbling. He collided with something soft that yelped in surprise. The drunk Xir woman, still trying to catch her wayward drink. "Oh, wonderful," she mumbled, blinking at him with unfocused golden eyes. "Are you here to arrest me too? Because I'll have you know, I am perfectly capable of arresting myself. Arresting whatever." A chair whizzed past, missing them by inches. The fight was spreading, drawing in more patrons like a violent whirlpool. Someone had produced a shock baton, its electric crackle adding a new dimension of danger to the chaos. "We need to get out of here," Rowan said, grabbing the woman's arm. She was dead weight, or rather, dead weightlessness, offering no help as he tried to maneuver them toward the exit. "But my drink," she protested weakly. "Leave it." A security guard, blood streaming from his nose in perfect spheres, came spinning toward them with fists swinging. Rowan did the only thing he could think of. He grabbed a floating serving tray and used it as a shield, then pushed off hard from the wall, dragging the Auxire woman with him. He maneuvered through the three-dimensional battlefield, like a man who'd spent years in space. though most of those years had been in conference rooms, not bar brawls. Duck under a flying bottle. Push off from an unconscious patron. Avoid the expanding cloud of someone's spilled beer. "You're very swooshy," the woman observed, her head lolling against his shoulder. "Everything's swooshy. Is this what humans feel like all the time?" "Only on weekends," Rowan grunted, finally reaching the exit tube. He shoved them both through, just as the bartender hit the gravity control. The sounds of bodies hitting the floor with various thuds and curses echoed behind them. The transit corridor outside the bar was blessedly normal, with standard gravity and significantly fewer flying chairs. Rowan set the woman down. She immediately started to slide down the wall. "Whoa there!" He caught her before she hit the floor. "Where are you staying? I'll call you a transport." She laughed, a sound like tinkling bells if the bells were slightly drunk. "Staying? Oh, that's funny. I'm staying right here, apparently. On this lovely floor. It's so horizontal." "Great." Rowan checked his chrono. The last shuttle to his hotel district left in 10 minutes. He could make it if he ran. He looked at the woman, who was now examining her hand with intense concentration, as if she'd never seen one before. His mother's voice echoed in his head. "Rowan Carter, you never could leave well enough alone." "Come on," he sighed, hauling her to her feet. "There's a transit pod station around the corner. We'll get you sobered up and figure out where you belong." "I belong in the stars," she said, philosophically, then hiccuped. "But they kicked me out. Said I was too something. Responsible, irresponsible, one of those." The transit pod was empty. A small mercy. Rowan deposited her in a seat and took one across from her, already composing the complaint he'd file about the bar. Diplomatic immunity only went so far, and his wristcom exploded with notifications. Messages, alerts, news feeds, all screaming for attention. He frowned, pulling up the display. "Breaking human diplomat saves Exeter royalty in bar brawl. Romance among the stars. Mysterious hero rescues drunk princess. Exclusive video is this Empress Syraxa's secret human lover." Rowan's blood turned to ice. He slowly turned to look at the woman across from him, who had managed to curl up in her seat like a cat, one shoe missing, and her elaborate hairstyle now resembling a bird's nest. "Please," he said carefully, "tell me your name is not Syraxa." She opened one eye. "Technically, it's Her Imperial Majesty Syraxa Talvrex, Defender of the 17 Moons, Keeper of the Solar Winds, Empress of the Exwire Protectorate and surrounding tributaries." She paused. "But Syraxa's fine. We're friends now. Barfight friends. Battle buddies. Brawl. Pals." Rowan's wristcom hadn't stopped pinging. He looked at the latest notification and felt his soul leave his body. A video, already with 2 million views. Security footage from the bar, showing him pulling the Empress of a major interstellar power out of a drunken brawl. The way he'd held her, guided her through the chaos, shielded her with his body, it looked heroic. It looked protective. It looked romantic. The comments were already speculating. Who was this mysterious human? Why was he with the Empress' secret romance political alliance? The algorithms were having a field day, and somewhere, Rowan was certain, diplomatic careers were ending. "Oh no," he breathed. "Oh yes." Syraxa suddenly sat up, surprisingly coherent. "You saved me, my hero. The man who... She frowned, concentration visible on her features. "Who did the thing with the tray very impressive. Mother always said I should marry someone impressive." "We're not getting married." "We're not?" She looked genuinely disappointed. "But you rescued me. That's how it works in all the stories. Hero saves princess. There's a wedding. Someone gets turned into a newt, but that's usually just a subplot." Rowan's comm chimed. A priority message from Ambassador Harrison, his direct supervisor. He didn't need to read it to know what it said. The subject line, "What the hell did you do?" covered the basics. The pod announced their arrival at Central Station. Rowan helped Saraxa to her feet, his mind racing. He needed to get her back to the palace, file a report, do damage control. This was a disaster of epic proportions, the kind that ended with reassignment to asteroid mining colonies. They emerged into the station's main concourse, and Rowan's heart sank. Reporters, dozens of them, human and Aswire, and a dozen other species, all surging forward with cameras and questions. "Lord Carter, is it true you're the Empress's secret fiancé? Your Majesty, how long have you been seeing the human diplomat? Will this affect the water negotiations? Is it true you met in an underground fighting ring?" "We're not," Rowan started. "He's magnificent, isn't he?" Saraxa interrupted, draping herself over his arm with surprising grace for someone who'd been examining her own hand 5 minutes ago. "So brave, so noble, so human." The crowd went wild. Rowan tried to speak, to clarify, to do anything that might salvage the situation. But Saraxa's grip on his arm was surprisingly strong. "One more question," a Terran reporter shouted. "What does this mean for human-Xire relations?" Saraxa smiled, a predator's smile that reminded Rowan that, drunk or not, she was still the ruler of 17 worlds. "It means," she purred, "that things are about to get very interesting." The crowd parted as Imperial guards finally arrived, their armor gleaming and weapons conspicuously visible. The captain, a scarred veteran whose expression suggested he'd rather be fighting a sun dragon than dealing with this, bowed stiffly. "Your Majesty, Lord Carter, the palace is waiting." Lord Carter. Rowan opened his mouth to correct him, but Saraxa's claws dug slightly into his arm. A warning, or maybe just drunken balance. Either way, he kept quiet as they were escorted to a waiting hover limo. The moment the doors sealed, Saraxa released him and slumped into a seat. That was exciting. Also terrible. Terribly exciting. She looked at him with those golden eyes, and for a moment, Rowan saw something sharp and calculating behind the drunken facade. "Thank you for the rescue. I mean, even if you've just made both our lives impossibly complicated." "How complicated?" Rowan asked, though he was afraid he already knew. She laughed, that tinkling sound again, but this time with an edge of hysteria. "Oh, my dear accidental fiancé, by tomorrow morning, half the galaxy will think we're in love. The water cartels will use it to discredit me. The military hardliners will call for your head. And my mother." She shuddered. "My mother will start planning the wedding. Can't you just tell them the truth?" "The truth." Saraxa pulled out a compact mirror and grimaced at her reflection. "The truth is that the Empress of the Xwire Protectorate got blackout drunk in a dive bar and had to be rescued by a human diplomat who was just trying to finish his whiskey in peace. Which story do you think sounds better for Imperial stability?" She had a point. Rowan slumped in his seat, watching the lights of obsidian spires blur past outside. The floating capital of Zephyria was beautiful at night, its crystalline towers defying gravity and logic. But he couldn't appreciate it. His career was over. His life was over. He'd be a footnote in history, the idiot who caused an interstellar incident because he couldn't mind his own business. "For what it's worth," Saraxa said quietly, "you really were magnificent. The way you used that serving tray inspired. I haven't seen moves like that outside of the Royal Guard." "I played zero-G handball in college," Rowan admitted. "Of course you did," she smiled, a real smile this time. "Look, Lord Carter." "Just Rowan. I'm not a lord." "You are now. Congratulations on your sudden nobility." She waved a hand dismissively. "Look, Rowan, we're both in this mess. The footage is out there, the story is spreading, and by now, someone's probably already written fan fiction about us." "Fan fiction. Trust me, You don't want to know. Rule 34 of the galactic internet is ironclad. She straightened. And drunk or not, Rowan could see the Empress in her posture. So we have two choices. We can try to deny everything, look foolish, and give our enemies ammunition. Or we play along, temporarily, a diplomatic romance. Good for both our peoples. You help me navigate this water crisis without looking weak. I help you not get reassigned to counting methane crystals on some frozen moon. Win-win. That's insane. That's politics. She leaned forward, steadier now, though her eyes still had that glassy sheen. Think about it. The Aquiferian Combine is squeezing us dry. Your Earth government wants influence in this sector. What better symbol of cooperation than a fairy tale romance? Rowan's comm buzzed again. 17 missed calls from the embassy. His career was definitely over. How long? He asked. Until the immediate crisis passes. A few weeks, maybe a month. We break up amicably, due to irreconcilable cultural differences. You go home a hero who almost married an empress. I get breathing room to deal with the water situation without looking like I'm caving to human pressure. It was insane. It was career suicide. It was probably their best option. My government will never approve this, Rowan said. They already have. Siraxa held up her own comm, showing a message from the Terran embassy. Ambassador Harrison sends his regards and says, quote, "Don't fuck this up worse than you already have." That sounds like Harrison. The limo descended toward the palace, a massive structure that looked like someone had carved a city out of a single, enormous gem. Landing lights guided them to a private platform, where more guards waited, along with what looked like half the imperial court. One more thing, Siraxa said as the limo touched down. My great-aunt is going to try to test your worthiness by challenging you to ritual combat. Just compliment her tale. She's vain about it. What? But the doors were already opening, and Rowan Carter, water rights negotiator and accidental romantic hero, stepped out into his new life as the supposed fiancé of the most powerful woman in 3 star systems. The crowd of nobles parted as they walked through, whispers following in their wake. Rowan caught fragments, rather short for a human. Decent bone structure, though. Do you think they've mated yet? And tried not to react. The throne room was a study in organized chaos. Advisors clustered in groups, arguing in harsh whispers. Military officers stood at attention, their expressions carefully neutral. And at the center of it all, on a throne that seemed to be carved from a single massive pearl, sat the Queen Mother. She was older than Siraxa, her fur silver-white with age, but her eyes were sharp as laser cutters. Those eyes, fixed on Rowan with an intensity that made him want to confess to crimes he hadn't committed. So, the Queen Mother said, her voice carrying easily across the vast chamber, you are the human who has captured my daughter's heart. He's wonderful, Mother, Siraxa interrupted, suddenly draped over Rowan again. So brave and noble and human. You said that already, dear. Also, you're drunk. Only a little, like 40% drunk, 60% tactical genius. The Queen Mother's whiskers twitched. Amusement, annoyance, Rowan couldn't tell. Lord Carter, she continued. And there was that title again. The videos suggest you acted with honor in defending my daughter. For that, you have the gratitude of the Exor Protectorate. I was just... However, she continued as if he hadn't spoken, if this is some elaborate human scheme to gain influence over the throne, be aware that we have 17 different methods of execution, and I'm rather fond of the one involving gravity wells and compression suits. Mother, Siraxa protested. Just making conversation. Dear. The Queen Mother rose from her throne with fluid grace. Lord Carter, you will be given quarters in the palace. Tomorrow, when my daughter is sober and you've had time to contemplate your life choices. We will discuss this. situation properly. She swept past them, pausing only to add, "Oh, and the press conference is scheduled for noon. Try to look in love. The last fake relationship we orchestrated fell apart when the Duke forgot which tentacle was his supposed partner's favorite. Very embarrassing." Rowan watched her go, then turned to Saraxa. "She knows." "Mother knows everything. She probably knew about this before we did." Saraxa yawned, showing impressive fangs. "Come on, fake fiancé. Let me show you to your quarters before I pass out in a fountain. Again." As he followed her deeper into the palace, his comm buzzed with another priority message, this time from Trix, his personal AI assistant. "Rowan, you magnificent disaster." The message read, the AI's personality coming through even in text. "I've run 16,000 simulations of how this could go wrong. Would you like me to list them alphabetically or by probability of causing a war?" Despite everything, Rowan smiled. At least some things never changed. The guest quarters were ridiculous. The bedroom alone was larger than his entire apartment back on Earth, with a bed that could comfortably sleep a small army, and a bathroom that included what appeared to be a zero-G spa. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of the city, its lights reflecting off the atmospheric processors that kept the desert planet's air breathable. "Home, sweet temporary home," Saraxa announced, steadier on her feet but still listing slightly to port. "The staff will bring your things from the hotel. Try not to break anything. Some of this furniture is older than your entire civilization." "Saraxa," Rowan said carefully. "Why were you really in that bar?" She paused at the door, not turning around. "Would you believe me if I said I just wanted one night where I wasn't the Empress? One night where I could drink terrible alcohol and make bad decisions like a normal person." "Yes." She did turn then, surprise flickering across her feline features. "Really? I've been in diplomatic service for 12 years. I've seen what the job does to people. The weight of it," he shrugged. "Sometimes you just need to be nobody in a nowhere bar. And instead, I became somebody in tomorrow's headlines." She laughed, but it was bitter. "Thank you, Rowan Carter, for the rescue, and for not asking too many questions. Get some rest. Tomorrow we convince the galaxy we're in love, save my planet from dying of thirst, and try not to start any wars." "Just another Tuesday in the diplomatic corps," Rowan said. This time her laugh was genuine. "I think I'm going to like having you around, fake fiancé. Good night." After she left, Rowan stood at the window, watching the city below. Somewhere out there, in the slums beyond the shining towers, people were rationing water by the milliliter. Children were going to bed thirsty. The Aquafarian Combine was getting richer by the hour. He'd come to Zephyria to help negotiate water rights. Instead, he'd become part of the story himself. His comm showed 247 unread messages, but he ignored them all. Tomorrow would bring press conferences and political theater and the bizarre challenge of pretending to be in love with an empress he'd just met. But tonight, he raised an imaginary glass to the stars. "To making bad decisions in nowhere bars," he murmured, "and to wherever they lead." In the distance, a transport ship lifted off, its drives painting light across the desert sky. Rowan watched it go, wondering if he'd ever see Earth again, and surprised to find he didn't much care. After all, how many people could say they'd accidentally gotten engaged to an empress while stone sober? His comm chimed one more time. Trix again. "For the record," the AI's message read, "the probability of this ending with you married, dead, or ruling a small moon is currently sitting at 23.7%. Each. I've already started composing your wedding playlist and your obituary, just to be efficient." Rowan laughed. Actually laughed, for the first time since he'd walked into that bar. Tomorrow, he'd have to be Lord Carter, fake fiancé to the Empress, symbol of human-Zir cooperation. But tonight, he was just Rowan, a man who'd tried to mind his own business and failed spectacularly. As he settled into the absurdly large bed, one thought kept circling back. Saraxa had sobered up awfully quickly once they were away from the cameras. And the way she draped herself over him, playing up the romance angle? "No," he said aloud to the empty room. "That's ridiculous." But the seed of doubt was planted. What if the whole thing, the drunkenness, the bar fight, the rescue, what if none of it had been an accident? He fell asleep still wondering, while outside his window, the desert planet spun on through the night, thirsty and waiting for salvation. The morning came too soon, heralded by what sounded like a symphony being murdered by power tools. Rowan jerked awake, disoriented by the unfamiliar ceiling with its intricate stellar map, inlaid in precious metals. "Good morning, Lord Carter." Trix's voice chirped from his wristcom. "It's 6 a.m. local time. The temperature is a balmy 47 degrees Celsius, and you have approximately 6 hours before you need to convince the galaxy you're madly in love with someone you met 12 hours ago. No pressure." "Trix, what is that noise?" That would be the traditional Xyre morning ceremonial welcome for honored guests. It's supposed to represent the birth of stars. The locals call it harmony of the spheres. Everyone else calls it, please make it stop. Rowan groaned and rolled out of bed, nearly tripping over a serving drone that had apparently been waiting for him to wake up. It beeped apologetically and offered him a tray with what looked like breakfast. Purple eggs, some kind of meat that was definitely still moving, and a beverage that seemed to be steaming and freezing simultaneously. "The purple eggs are safe," Trix advised. "The meat is technically alive but non-sentient. The drink is, well, let's call it an acquired taste that most humans never acquire." A knock at the door interrupted his contemplation of breakfast. Before he could answer, it opened to reveal a young Xyre woman in servant's livery. "Lord Carter, I am Vera, assigned as your personal attendant. Her Majesty requests your presence for morning preparations. Also, she asked me to give you this." She handed him a datapad. On it was a single message. "Try not to look too human, S." "What exactly does that mean?" Rowan asked. Vera's whiskers twitched in what might have been amusement. "I believe Her Majesty is referring to your species' tendency to, how did she put it, stand there like confused bipedal trees when faced with social complexity." "Charming. If it helps, my lord. She also said you have surprisingly acceptable bone structure for a primate." "It doesn't help, but thank you." 30 minutes later, after managing to choke down the purple eggs and avoid the definitely still moving meat, Rowan found himself in what could only be described as a war room disguised as a spa. Saraxa sat in the center, being simultaneously styled by 3 attendants while arguing with a holographic display of advisors. "No, Counselor Mirax, we are not using the relationship as leverage in the water negotiations," she said, not looking up as Rowan entered. "That would be tacky. We're using it as a distraction while we find actual leverage. There's a difference." "A subtle one of the holograms grumbled. "Subtlety is what separates us from the humans," Saraxa replied, then noticed Rowan. "No offense, darling." The endearment sounded strange in her mouth, like she was trying on an outfit that didn't quite fit. The advisors in the hologram turned to stare at him, with expressions ranging from curiosity to barely concealed hostility. "Lord Carter," one of them, an elderly Xyre with impressively long whiskers, spoke up. "I am Chancellor Varric. I trust you understand the delicate nature of our situation." "The water crisis, yes, The water crisis is a symptom," Varric interrupted. "The disease is the Aquiferian Combine's stranglehold on infrastructure. They control desalination, distribution, even the orbital ice mining. Every drop that reaches Zephiria's surface passes through their hands. And their price modifiers," another advisor added, "which seem to increase every time we breathe." Saraxa waved them silent. "Enough. We'll discuss strategy after the press conference." For now, we need to focus on the immediate problem making this relationship believable." The holograms winked out, leaving Rowan alone with Siraxa and her styling team. She looked different in daylight, more regal and intimidating. Her fur had been groomed to perfection, her mane styled into an elaborate configuration that probably had deep cultural significance. She wore a gown that shifted between colors like oil on water. "You clean up well," she said, examining him critically. "Vera, make sure he wears the blue ensemble. It'll bring out his eyes. Humans love that sort of thing." "I'm human," Rowan pointed out. "Yes, but you're not the target audience. They are." She gestured to the window, where media drones were already swarming like mechanical vultures. "Every major network in 3 systems is out there. We need to give them a show." "About that," Rowan said, "shouldn't we have some kind of story? How we met? How long we've been together? Favorite colors? That sort of thing." Siraxa smiled, showing just a hint of fang. "Oh, I've already handled that. Trix, be a dear and upload the relationship dossier to Rowan's comm." "Already done. Your Majesty." Trix's voice was entirely too cheerful. "Rowan, you'll be delighted to know that you've been secretly courting the Empress for 3 months. You met at a diplomatic function, where you impressed her with your knowledge of ancient Zaire poetry." "I don't know any Zaire poetry." "You do now. I've downloaded 17 collections to your neural implant. You particularly enjoy the works of Sektar the Mournful." "I don't have a neural implant." "Oh, well, this is awkward. Perhaps just wing it." Siraxa laughed. A genuine sound this time. "Don't look so terrified. We're not going to quiz you on poetry. Just follow my lead, look besotted, and try not to accidentally declare war on anyone." "That happened one time," Rowan protested, then caught her expression. "Wait, how did you know about the Proxima incident?" "I'm an Empress, darling. I know everything." She stood, and the attendants scattered. "Come, time to meet the press. Remember, you're madly in love with me. You think the water crisis is tragic but solvable. And under no circumstances do you mention the conspiracy theories about Aquifarian using bioweapons." "The what now?" But she was already sweeping out of the room, leaving Rowan to hurry after her. The press conference was held in the palace's garden of crystalline memories, a wonder of bioengineering, where each plant was actually a living data storage system containing the history of the Xwire people. The symbolism wasn't lost on Rowan. They were literally making history among history. Hundreds of reporters packed the space, their equipment creating a forest of cameras, microphones, and recording devices. As Rowan and Siraxa entered, hand in hand, her grip was surprisingly strong, possibly to prevent him from fleeing. The noise was deafening. "Your Majesty, Lord Carter, when's the wedding?" "How does Earth's government view this union?" "Lord Carter, is it true you fought 17 guards to reach the Empress?" That last one made Rowan blink. The story was already growing in the telling. Siraxa raised a hand for silence, and remarkably, got it. "Thank you all for coming. I know there has been much speculation about the events of last night. I'm here to address those rumors and to share something personal." She paused, and Rowan could practically feel the entire press corps lean forward. "Lord Carter and I have indeed been seeing each other. Privately, quietly, away from the public eye. Last night's incident at the Swaying Nebula was simply a case of being in the wrong place, at the wrong time. Or perhaps," she smiled at Rowan with what looked like genuine warmth, "the right place at the right time, as it allowed me to see once again the courage and honor of the man I've come to love." The questions exploded again, but this time Siraxa gestured for specific reporters. "Your Majesty," a Terran journalist called out, "how do you respond to critics who say this relationship is a political maneuver to improve human-Zaire relations during the water crisis?" "I would say," Siraxa's tone sharpened, "that those critics clearly have never been in love. The heart doesn't consider trade agreements or resource allocation. It simply knows what it wants. Lord Carter, another reporter, this one a four-eyed Altarian, fixed him with an intense stare. What first attracted you to Her Majesty? Rowan felt Saraxa's grip tighten slightly. A warning encouragement. He took a breath. Have you ever met someone who made you rethink everything you thought you knew? He said, surprised to find the words coming easily. The Empress is brilliant, compassionate, and dedicated to her people in a way that humbles me. She also, he added with a small smile, has a wonderful sense of humor, even if it sometimes involves testing visiting diplomats with ceremonial challenges. A ripple of laughter went through the crowd. Saraxa's grip relaxed. Speaking of the water crisis, a Xwire reporter interjected, her tone noticeably less friendly. How do you explain the timing of this announcement, just when public opinion is turning against the palace's handling of the shortage? The atmosphere shifted. This was the real question, the one everyone wanted answered. Saraxa's expression didn't change, but Rowan felt her tense beside him. The timing is unfortunate, she admitted. But I won't hide my personal happiness because of public challenges. If anything, having Rowan by my side gives me more strength to face these difficulties. His experience with resource negotiation, his contacts within the human diplomatic corps, these are advantages. Yes, but they're not why I'm with him. Then why? The reporter pressed. Saraxa turned to look at Rowan, and for a moment, he saw something unguarded in her golden eyes. Because he's the first person in years who looked at me and saw Saraxa, not just the Empress. The silence that followed was profound. Even the mechanical whir of the camera drones seemed to pause. Then, from the back of the crowd, someone started clapping. Others joined in, and soon the garden filled with applause. The cynical part of Rowan's brain noted how well that had played. But another part, a part he didn't want to examine too closely, wondered if she'd meant it. The rest of the press conference passed in a blur of questions about wedding plans, undecided, diplomatic implications complex, and whether human Xwire offspring were biologically possible, thankfully. No one dwelled on that one. Finally, Saraxa called an end to it, citing scheduled meetings with the Water Council. As they walked back into the palace, she released his hand and let out a long breath. Well, that could have gone worse. The offspring question was awkward. Please. My great-grandmother allegedly had a thing with a sentient gas cloud. Theoretical hybrid children are barely scandalous by royal standards. She paused at a junction in the corridor. The Water Council meeting is real, by the way, and you're coming with me. I am considerate on-the-job training for being a proper royal consort. She started walking again, and Rowan noticed they were heading deeper into the palace, into areas that looked significantly less ornate and more functional. Besides, I want to see if your reputation as a negotiator is deserved, or just typical human exaggeration. My record speaks for itself, Rowan said, slightly offended. Your record says you once talked a mining collective out of nuclear war by convincing them to settle their disputes with a cooking competition. It worked, didn't it? I'm not criticizing. I'm impressed. Anyone who can weaponize a souffle has skills I need. The Water Council chamber was a stark contrast to the garden's beauty. Functional, harsh lighting, and a massive holographic display showing Zephyria's water infrastructure in painful detail. Red zones marked areas in critical shortage, and there were far too many of them. Around the table sat representatives from every major stakeholder, municipal leaders, agricultural coordinators, industrial users, and notably, 3 representatives from the Aquafarian Combine. Ah, said the lead Aquafarian rep, a human woman with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. The happy couple. How wonderful. I'm Director Sarah Chen from Aquafarian. Such a pleasure to finally meet the man who's stolen our Empress's heart. There was enough venom in the word stolen to kill a small mammal. "The pleasure is mine," Rowan replied smoothly, noting how the other council members watched the interaction like spectators at a blood sport. "Shall we focus on the matter at hand?" Siraxa took her seat at the head of the table. "The new pricing structure Aquafarian submitted is unacceptable. A 30% increase in basic water rates will cause riots." "Supply and demand, Your Majesty," Chen replied. "The drought in the outer settlements has reduced ice mining yields. Our costs have increased." "Your profit margins have increased," corrected Councillor Mirax, the same elderly Zaire from the morning call. "By 47% according to your own financial disclosures. We have shareholders to consider. And we have citizens dying of thirst." Sirax's voice could have frozen mercury. The meeting devolved from there. Charts were brandished like weapons, statistics fired like bullets, and through it all, the Aquafarian representatives remained smugly unmoved. They had the monopoly, and everyone knew it. After 2 hours of circular arguments, Rowan noticed something. He activated Trix's scanning mode, a barely legal modification he'd had installed years ago, and watched the data flow. "Interesting," he murmured. "Lord Carter," Siraxa looked at him. "Do you have something to add?" "Maybe." He stood, moving to the holographic display. "Director Chen, you mentioned reduced ice mining yields, but according to the orbital traffic data, the number of ice haulers arriving at Zephyrian processing stations has actually increased by 12% over the last quarter." Chen's smile flickered. "Those figures aren't public." "No. But orbital trajectories are. Basic math does the rest." Rowan manipulated the display, highlighting the discrepancy. "So, either your haulers are carrying less ice per trip, which would be economically stupid, or they're lying about the shortage," Councillor Mirax finished, his whiskers twitching with interest. "That's a serious accusation." Chen's voice had gone cold. "It's not an accusation. It's math," Rowan replied. "Would you like to provide the actual tonnage data to clear this up?" "That's proprietary information." "How convenient." The room erupted in arguments. Chen was on her feet, gesturing angrily. The other Aquafarian reps were making frantic calls. Council members shouted over each other. Siraxa watched it all with a small smile, then caught Rowan's eye and mouthed, "Well done." It was a small victory. The Aquafarian team stonewalled, refused to provide data, and eventually stormed out, threatening legal action. But the seed of doubt had been planted. The other council members were energized, talking about independent audits and alternative suppliers. As the meeting concluded, Siraxa pulled Rowan aside. "That was cleverly done. How did you really get those numbers?" "A magician never reveals his secrets." "Magician, I thought you were a diplomat." "In my experience, they're often the same thing." She laughed. And again, Rowan was struck by how different she seemed when genuine emotion broke through the imperial facade. Their conversation was interrupted by Vera, Rowan's assigned attendant, who appeared with the kind of timing that suggested she'd been waiting for a break in the conversation. "Your Majesty, Lord Carter, there's been an incident at the Luminous Desert Settlement. Elder Sava is requesting immediate assistance." Siraxa's expression hardened. "What kind of incident?" "Water poisoning. Your Majesty, 17 ill so far. 2 critical." "Prepare my transport," Siraxa commanded, "and get medical teams mobilized." "I'm coming with you," Rowan said. "This could be dangerous. The desert settlements aren't exactly friendly to outsiders." "I'm not exactly an outsider anymore. Am I?" He gestured to his formal attire, now bearing the subtle insignia of royal connection. "Besides, fake fiancé or not, I'm not going to sit in the palace while people are suffering." Something flickered across Siraxa's face. Surprise approval. She nodded. "Very well. But stay close to me. The desert has its own rules, and breaking them tends to be fatal." An hour later, they were airborne in the Imperial transport. the gleaming spires of the capital giving way to the harsh beauty of Zephiria's wilderness. The luminous desert earned its name. The sands literally glowed with bioluminescent microorganisms, creating an ethereal landscape that looked like a sea of stars. "Tell me about Elder Sava," Rowan said, watching the desert flow beneath them. "She's the matriarch of the oldest settlement in the desert. Her people have been there since before the water wars, before the corporate consolidation. They know secrets about surviving in the desert that we've forgotten in our cities." Saraxa's expression was troubled. "If someone targeted them, it wasn't random." "You think this was deliberate? 17 people sick from the same water source. That's not contamination. That's an attack." The settlement appeared on the horizon, a cluster of structures that seemed to grow from the sand itself. As they descended, Rowan saw crowds gathered around a central building, a medical facility, judging by the emergency vehicles. Elder Sava met them at the landing pad. She was ancient even by Zir standards, her fur white as bone, but she moved with surprising grace. Her eyes, when they fixed on Rowan, were sharp as laser scalpels. "So," she said without preamble, "the human who would marry our Empress. Tell me, boy, do you know what water means to desert people?" "Life," Rowan answered simply. Not as stupid as you look." She turned to Saraxa. "Your Majesty, the situation is worse than reported. The poisoning is spreading to other wells." They were led to the medical facility, where the scene was controlled chaos. Patients on beds, medics running tests, and in the corner, a young Exwire woman clutching 2 children, all 3 showing the telltale blue tinge around their lips that indicated water toxin exposure. "The symptoms match nothing in our database," the lead medic reported. "It's not bacterial, not chemical, at least, not any chemical we recognize." Rowan activated Trix again, scanning the patients. Trix cross-referenced these symptoms with industrial compounds, specifically those used in desalination processes. "Working. Oh, that's not good." Trix's voice was unusually subdued. "Rowan, those symptoms match exposure to compound X74, a catalyst used in high-efficiency desalination. But here's the thing, it's supposed to be completely filtered out before distribution." "Unless someone wanted it there," Rowan said grimly. Saraxa had been speaking quietly with Elder Sava, but she turned at his words. "What did you find?" He explained Trix's analysis, watching as understanding and fury dawned on her face in equal measure. "Aquafarian uses X74 in their newest facilities," she said slowly. "The ones they claim are more efficient. Efficient at processing, maybe, but if the filtration fails, or is sabotaged—" "Your Majesty," Elder Sava interrupted, "there's something else you should know. 3 days ago, Aquafarian representatives came to the settlement. They offered to buy our traditional water rights, the old claims that predate their monopoly. We refused. The pieces were falling into place, forming a picture Rowan didn't like. They're making an example." Saraxa's voice was deadly quiet. "Refuse to sell and suffer the consequences." "We can't prove it," Rowan warned. "Not yet." She turned to the medical team. "Can the poisoning be treated?" "Yes, Your Majesty. But we need specific chelation agents. The nearest supply is in the capital." "Already en route," Vera announced, appearing with her usual impeccable timing. 3 medical transports, ETA 40 minutes. Rowan noticed one of the children in the corner had started crying. A thin, desperate sound. Without thinking, he moved over and knelt beside them. The mother pulled back protectively, but Elder Sava said something in rapid Zir, and the woman relaxed marginally. "Hey there," Rowan said softly to the crying child. "I know it's scary, but help is coming. Okay, the Empress herself is here to make sure you get better." The child, barely more than a toddler, looked at him with huge golden eyes. "Hurts," she whispered. "I know, but you're brave. Aren't you desert children are the bravest in all of Zephyria? A tiny nod. Then be brave just a little longer. Can you do that? Another nod, and the crying subsided to sniffles. The mother looked at him with something like wonder. You have young ones of your own, she asked. No. No. Rowan stood, suddenly self-conscious, and found Saraxa watching him with an unreadable expression. You're good with children, she observed as they walked outside. I have 6 younger siblings. You learn, or you get eaten alive. 6, she sounded genuinely shocked. Humans truly are prolific breeders. Says the species that has litters. Twins at most and rarely. 6 siblings. She shook her head. Your mother must be a saint. She always said she was raising her own diplomatic corps, cheaper than university. Saraxa laughed, but it faded quickly as she looked out over the settlement. This can't continue. The water poisoning, the price gouging, the monopolistic control. My people are suffering while corporations get rich on their thirst. So what do? She looked at him, and there was something vulnerable in her expression. You're under no obligation to involve yourself in this. Rowan, our arrangement is fake. I know. But those kids in there aren't fake. Their pain isn't fake. And if I can help... He shrugged. Besides, what's the point of being a fake royal consort if I can't use it to do some good? Most would use it to do some embezzling. I'm bad at math. Liar. I saw what you did with those orbital calculations. She was quiet for a moment, then said, There's a gathering tonight. The Desert Elders, discussing response to the poisoning. They've agreed to let us attend. Us as in me too. You've apparently made an impression. Elder Sava called you acceptably sensible for a hairless ape. High praise. From her incredibly high, Saraxa's calm chimed, and she checked it with a frown. The medical transports are ahead of schedule. Good. We'll ensure everyone is treated. Then tonight. Tonight we plan our response. What kind of response? Her smile was all predator. The kind that reminds certain corporations that the desert has a long memory and longer claws. As the sun began to set, turning the luminous sands into a sea of fire, Rowan found himself standing at the edge of the settlement, watching the medical teams work. The poisoned were responding well to treatment, and the immediate crisis was passing. But the larger crisis, the one that had brought him to Zephyria in the first place, loomed larger than ever. Tricks, he subvocalized to his AI. Start compiling everything you can on Aquiferian's operations, financial records, safety violations, executive communications, everything. Ooh, are we going corporate espionage? How exciting and legally dubious. Just be discreet about it. Discreet is my middle name. Well, actually it's Trouble, but discreet was a close second. Saraxa appeared beside him, having changed from her formal gown into something more practical, tactical gear that somehow still looked regal. Ready for your first Desert Elder gathering, she asked. Any advice? Don't speak unless spoken to. Don't refuse any offered food no matter how strange it looks. And whatever you do, don't mention the Great Sandworm incident of 2387. The what now? Exactly. Don't mention it. She started toward a ground vehicle waiting nearby. Oh, and Rowan. Thank you. For earlier, with the child. Not many would have bothered. It was nothing. No, she said quietly. It wasn't. As they drove into the deepening desert, toward a gathering that would either forge new alliances or shatter old ones. Rowan reflected on how quickly his simple water negotiation mission had become something else entirely. He was fake engaged to an Empress, investigating corporate poisoning, and about to attend a secret meeting of Desert Elders. Hey, Trix, he murmured. Yes, O Lord of increasingly poor life choices. Add desert politics to my resume. Right between accidental royal and corporate nemesis. Your resume is getting weird. Rowan, Looking at Saraxa's profile in the vehicle's dim light, her face set with determination to save her people. Rowan found he didn't mind the weirdness. In fact, he was starting to embrace it. The transport rolled on through the glowing sands, carrying them toward a confrontation that would determine the fate of millions. And somewhere, in the back of his mind, Rowan wondered if Saraxa's drunken stumble into that bar had been quite as accidental as it seemed. The gathering of desert elders took place in a structure that defied conventional architecture. Half buried in the luminescent sand, it seemed to breathe with the desert itself. Walls, shifting subtly in patterns that made Rowan's eyes water if he stared too long. Biomimetic construction, Saraxa explained as they approached. The building is alive, in a sense. It filters the air, regulates temperature, and most importantly, it listens. Listens to vibrations in the sand, approaching sandstorms, underground water movement, even the emotional state of gatherings within. The elders say it knows truth from lies. Comforting, Rowan muttered, suddenly very aware of every half-truth he'd told in the last 48 hours. Inside, 12 figures sat in a perfect circle on cushions that seemed to be extensions of the floor itself. Elder Sava gestured for them to take empty positions, and Rowan tried not to think about the way the surface beneath him pulsed gently, like a massive heartbeat. "We gather in the old way," Elder Sava intoned. "Beneath the eyes of stars and sand, Empress Saraxa brings the human, Rowan Carter, who speaks for distant Earth and shares her heart." Rowan caught the slight emphasis on shares her heart, and wondered if the elder suspected their deception. But Sava continued without pause. "Today's poisoning is not isolated. 3 settlements report similar incidents, always after refusing Aquifarians' offers to buy ancestral water rights." She produced a traditional data crystal, its surface etched with flowing script. "The pattern is clear. They seek to break us through fear." Another elder, younger but bearing scars that spoke of harsh experience, leaned forward. "With respect, Elder Sava, knowing their strategy and defeating it are different things. They control the infrastructure. They have legal monopoly. What can we do but endure?" "We can expose them," Rowan said, then caught himself. "Apologies. I shouldn't have spoken without invitation." But Sava waved dismissively. "You are here as Saraxa's voice and heart. Speak freely. What exposure do you suggest?" Rowan activated Trix's discrete projection mode, casting a small hologram in the circle's center. "For the past 6 hours, my AI has been analyzing Aquifarians' data trails. We found something interesting." The hologram showed shipping manifests, financial records, chemical procurement orders. "They're buying 3 times the amount of X74 catalyst they should need for their stated production levels. Either they're incredibly inefficient, or they're producing more water than they're reporting." Saraxa finished, her eyes sharp as she studied the data. "They're stockpiling, creating artificial scarcity," an elder growled, "driving up prices while hoarding reserves." "It's worse than that," Trix's voice emerged from the projection, startling several elders. "If I may continue the presentation." "Thank you." Based on satellite imagery of their facilities, they've built hidden storage tanks in the deep desert. Conservative estimates put their unreported reserves at approximately 500 million liters. The silence that followed was deafening. In a world where water was rationed by the milliliter, the number was obscene. "Can we prove this?" Saraxa asked quietly. "The satellite images are publicly available if you know where to look," Rowan said. "The chemical purchases are hidden, but not illegally obtained. It's all circumstantial but compelling." "Circumstantial won't stop them," the scarred elder said. "They have lawyers, media control, politicians in their pockets. Then we don't fight them in their arena," Saraxa said. "We fight them in ours." Elder Sava smiled, a predator's expression despite her age. "You propose the old ways." I propose we remind them that this desert was here before their corporations, and will be here after. Rowan, could your contacts in the Terran Diplomatic Corps be persuaded to call for an independent audit? Possibly, but Aquafarian would stall it in bureaucracy for months. Then we give them incentive to cooperate. Saraxa stood, and Rowan noticed how the living walls seemed to pulse in rhythm with her movement. A series of public forums across all settlements. Not protests, educational sessions. We teach people to read their water bills, to understand the chemistry, to ask the right questions. They'll spin it as rabble-rousing, Rowan warned. Let them. Every time they overreact, they reveal themselves. She turned to the elders. But this only works if the desert stands united. All settlements, all tribes, all voices speaking as one. The elders exchanged glances, communicating in the subtle way of people who had known each other for decades. Finally, Sava spoke. The desert remembers when the first corporations came, promising prosperity. We have watched our aquifers drained, our prices raised, our children thirsted. If the Empress leads, the desert will follow. And the human, the scarred elder, looked at Rowan. What role does Earth's representative play in this? Rowan felt the weight of their attention, the living building itself seeming to focus on him. I came here to negotiate water rights, but I've learned that negotiation means nothing if one side holds all the power. Earth has influence, media reach, and most importantly, we have competition. Competition. There are other water companies, smaller but ambitious, who would love a chance at Zephyria's market. If we can prove Aquafarian's malfeasance, if we can break their monopoly. He shrugged. Market forces can be a weapon too. Spoken like a true diplomat, Sava said, and Rowan couldn't tell if it was compliment or insult. Very well. The Desert Elders pledge support to this endeavor. But know this: if you fail, if this brings more suffering to our people, the consequences will be severe. The meeting continued for hours, hammering out details, assigning responsibilities, planning the campaign that would either free them from Aquafarian's grip or tighten it further. Through it all, Rowan found himself watching Saraxa, seeing new facets of her personality, the way she mediated between different factions with subtle grace, how she remembered every elder's name, their settlement's specific challenges, their family situations. This wasn't just political maneuvering, she genuinely cared. It was well past midnight when they finally emerged from the living building. The desert night was cold, stars brilliant in the unpolluted sky, the sands glowing softly like scattered moon dust. That went well, Saraxa said as they walked to their transport. Did it? I couldn't tell if Elder Sava wanted to adopt me or feed me to something carnivorous. Both. Probably. She's complicated. Saraxa paused, looking up at the stars. Rowan, what you said in there about competition, do you really have those contacts? I have some favors I can call in. Miranda Zhao at Neptune Hydro owes me for mediating their labor dispute last year. They'd kill for a chance at this market. And if Aquafarian retaliates, they have significant influence on Earth too. Then, I guess I better not go back to Earth for a while. He said it lightly, but the reality of his situation was starting to sink in. He was burning bridges, choosing sides in a conflict that could end his career. Saraxa studied him in the starlight. Why are you really doing this? And don't say it's just the right thing to do. Plenty of diplomats know what's right and do nothing. Rowan considered lying, but remembered the building that knew truth from falsehood. More than that, he found he didn't want to lie to her. My youngest sister, Arya, has a respiratory condition, needs specialized treatment, expensive medications. When she was 10, there was a shortage. Some company had bought up the supply, tripled the prices. I watched my parents beg, borrow, nearly bankrupt themselves to keep her breathing. He kicked at the glowing sand. I became a diplomat because I thought I could prevent that kind of suffering, Turns out, I mostly just documented in properly formatted reports. Until now. Until now, he agreed. So maybe this is selfish. Maybe I'm just trying to prove to myself that I can do more than talk. There are worse reasons, Siraxa said softly. My father died during the Third Water War. Not in battle, he was inspecting a refugee camp, trying to ensure fair distribution. Corporate mercenaries didn't like that. Made it look like an accident. Siraxa. I was 14. Watched my mother try to hold the empire together while grieving. Watched the board of directors at Aquafarian send a fruit basket to the funeral. Her laugh was bitter. So yes, this is personal for me too. They stood in comfortable silence, two people bound by false engagement, but genuine purpose. Finally, their driver coughed politely, and they climbed into the transport. The ride back was quiet, each lost in thought. As they entered the capital's airspace, Rowan's comm exploded with messages again. Tricks, summary. Oh, where to start your fake engagement has inspired 3 romantic films already in production. Aquafarian stock dropped 12% on rumors of investigation. Someone leaked that you have impressive abs, though I can't verify that claim. And, most interestingly, Mira Sol from Terran Intelligence wants an urgent meeting. Mira's here. Who's Mira Sol? Siraxa asked. Trouble, Rowan said. Brilliant. Necessary trouble, but trouble nonetheless. They landed at the palace to find Mira waiting in the formal reception room, looking perfectly at ease despite it being 3 in the morning. She was human, Korean ancestry, with the kind of friendly face that made people forget she was recording everything they said. Rowan, Your Majesty. She bounced to her feet with energy that defied the hour. Congratulations on the engagement. I brought champagne. She produced a bottle from seemingly nowhere. It's Terran vintage, completely undrinkable, but it's the thought that counts. Mira, Rowan said carefully, what are you doing here? Officially covering the romance of the century for Terran Broadcasting. Her smile turned sharp. Unofficially, making sure Earth's interests are protected during this fascinating political upheaval. There's no upheaval, Siraxa said coolly. Not yet, Mira agreed cheerfully. But Rowan's little math demonstration at the Water Council has people asking questions. And questions, as we know, are dangerous things. She pulled out a data pad, swiping through files with practiced ease. I've been doing some digging. Did you know Archon Derek Thorne is arriving tomorrow? Sorry, today. Time zones are weird in space. Archon Thorne is coming here. Siraxa's voice could have frozen plasma. Who's Archon Thorne? Rowan asked. CEO of Aquafarian Combine. Mira supplied. Net worth approximately equal to a small solar system. Reputation for hostile takeovers and aggressive expansion. Also collects extinct species as a hobby, which tells you everything about his personality. He's coming to do damage control, Siraxa said. To remind everyone who holds the real power. Or, Mira suggested, to make a deal. See, I intercepted some interesting communications. Seems Archon is worried about his company's reputation. Bad press affects stock prices, and stockholders get cranky when their dividends shrink. He's going to offer a token concession, Rowan realized. Lower prices slightly. Promise to investigate the poisoning. All in exchange for maintaining the monopoly. Bingo. You're good at this game. Mira sprawled in a chair with casual disregard for protocol. So the question becomes, do you take the deal and help some people? Or hold out for real change and risk helping no one? Siraxa began pacing, a predator caged by circumstance. If we refuse his offer publicly, he'll paint us as unreasonable. If we accept, we legitimize his control. There's a third option, Rowan said slowly. We let him make his offer, then counter with something he can't accept, but can't publicly refuse. Such as full transparency, open books, public audit, real-time monitoring of all facilities, Frame it as a partnership for the people's benefit. Mira whistled. He'd rather eat glass. But you're right, he couldn't refuse without looking guilty. Then we need to control the narrative, Saraxa decided. Mira, how quickly can you arrange a live broadcast? Honey, I could arrange a live broadcast from the surface of a black hole if the story was good enough. When and where? Today's formal reception. Archon will expect private negotiations first. Instead, we make it public from the start. Ambush journalism, Mira grinned. I love it. Fair warning though, Archon didn't get where he is by playing nice. Push him too hard, and people might start having accidents. Let him try. Saraxa's smile was all fangs. I'm not my father. Mira left with promises to set everything in motion, leaving Rowan and Saraxa alone in the reception room. The palace was quiet around them, the kind of deep silence that came in the hours before dawn. We should rest, Saraxa said finally. Today will be challenging. Saraxa, Rowan called as she turned to leave. What you said about your father. I'm sorry. She paused at the doorway. He would have liked you. He always said the best negotiations happened between people who understood loss. She smiled sadly. Rest well, fake fiancé. Tomorrow we go to war with words instead of water. Rowan returned to his quarters, but sleep eluded him. He stood at the window, watching the city wake beneath the rising sun, and wondered what he'd gotten himself into. Somewhere out there, Archon Thorne was preparing his own strategies, calculating the exact price of suffering that would maximize profit. Tricks, he said quietly. I need everything you can find on Archon Thorne. Personal history, psychological profiles, weaknesses. Already compiling. Boss. Initial findings: he's allergic to shellfish, went through a messy divorce 6 years ago, and has a daughter he never sees. Oh, and he once had a competitor's family pet kidnapped to make a point during negotiations. Charming. Isn't he also? Fun fact, he's apparently terrified of small spaces. Claustrophobia resulting from a childhood incident involving a mining elevator. Useful to know. Rowan. Trix's voice turned uncharacteristically serious. Are you sure about this? Thorne isn't some local bureaucrat. He's connected, ruthless, and very, very rich. I'm sure I'm probably making a terrible mistake, Rowan admitted. But I'm also sure I can't sit by and do nothing. That's what I figured. I've already started backing up all our data to 17 different secure servers. You know, just in case we need to run for our lives later. The sun climbed higher, painting Zephiria's sky in shades of orange and gold. Somewhere in the desert, people were waking to another day of rationed water and rising prices. In the palace, servants were preparing for a reception that would either change everything or change nothing. And in his borrowed quarters, a human diplomat who just wanted to finish his drink in peace prepared to face one of the most powerful men in the galaxy, with nothing but words and the questionable protection of a fake engagement. He thought about Saraxa, about the steel beneath her silk, the pain beneath her power. Whatever game she was playing, and he was increasingly certain she was playing one, he was all in now. Tricks, he said, turning from the window. Add corporate nemesis to my resume. Already done. Right under accidental revolutionary and above worst fake fiancé ever. Despite everything, Rowan smiled. In 12 hours, Archon Thorne would arrive expecting to find a puppet Empress and a convenient human scapegoat. Instead, he'd find something else entirely. The water wars were about to take an unexpected turn. The morning brought a flurry of activity. Vera appeared with a formal outfit that somehow managed to be both Terran diplomatic standard and Zwire ceremonial dress. A sartorial impossibility that must have kept seamstresses up all night. Her Majesty requests your presence for breakfast strategy session, she informed him. Also, she said to tell you that if you're planning anything diplomatically creative, she needs advance warning. Define diplomatically creative? I believe her exact words were, Anything that might cause an interstellar incident, or require me to actually marry him. Breakfast was held in a smaller dining room overlooking the palace's water gardens, a pointed reminder of the abundance the powerful enjoyed. Saraxa was already there, surrounded by advisors and studying holographic displays. "Sleep well?" she asked without looking up. "Like a man about to face a firing squad." "So, perfectly normally then." She dismissed the advisors with a gesture. "Mira's broadcast is arranged. She's calling it a conversation for Zephyria's future. Archon will hate the publicity." "That's the idea." "Yes. But cornered predators are dangerous." She finally looked at him, and Rowan saw the exhaustion she was hiding. "Are you ready for this?" "Are you?" "I've been ready since I was 14. She pushed a datapad toward him. "Archon's psychological profile, compiled by Imperial Intelligence. He's smart, ruthless, but also vain. He likes to be seen as a visionary, not a vulture. So we frame him as one or the other." "Exactly. Force him to choose between profit and perception." They spent the next hours planning, strategizing, preparing for verbal warfare. Through it all, Rowan found himself impressed by Saraxa's mind, the way she could see 3 moves ahead, anticipate counters, plan contingencies. "You're staring," she said during a brief break. "Sorry. I was just thinking you're wasted as an Empress. You should be running a galaxy-spanning crime syndicate." "Who says I'm not?" She smiled at his expression. "Joke, mostly." The reception began at noon. The palace's great hall filling with nobles, diplomats, media representatives, and carefully selected members of the public. Archon Thorne arrived exactly on time, because men like him understood that punctuality was a form of power. He was older than Rowan expected, silver-haired and sharp-featured, wearing a suit that cost more than most people's homes. His security detail was discreet but present, and his smile never reached his eyes. "Your Majesty," he said, bowing precisely the correct depth. "Lord Carter, how wonderful to finally meet the happy couple." "Archon Thorne," Saraxa's greeting was cooler. "Welcome to Zephyria. I trust your journey was comfortable." "Indeed. Though I couldn't help but notice the protest camps near the spaceport. Such a shame when people don't understand economic necessities. Already drawing battle lines." Rowan stepped forward, offering his hand. "I'm sure once they understand your company's commitment to transparency and fair pricing, those protests will disappear." Thorne's handshake was firm, his smile sharp. Optimism, how refreshingly human. "Shall we begin?" Mira appeared with perfect timing, her camera crew already rolling. "The people of Zephyria are eager to hear about solutions to the water crisis." Rowan saw the flash of annoyance in Thorne's eyes before his public mask slipped back into place. "Of course. Aquiferian is always happy to engage with the community." They took their positions, Thorne in one chair, Saraxa and Rowan together on a love seat that forced them to sit closer than strictly necessary. Mira stood to the side, managing to look professional despite the gleeful glint in her eyes. "Archon Thorne," Mira began. "Aquiferian controls 94% of Zephyria's water infrastructure. Many say this monopoly enables price manipulation. How do you respond?" "We provide an essential service," Thorne replied smoothly. "Our infrastructure investments have brought water to millions who had none. Yes, we control the market, but that control ensures efficiency and reliability." "Efficiency like the recent poisonings?" Rowan asked innocently. Thorne's smile tightened. "Isolated incidents that we're investigating thoroughly. We suspect sabotage by extremist elements trying to discredit legitimate business." "How convenient," Saraxa murmured, just loud enough for the cameras. "Your Majesty suggests something." Thorne's voice carried a warning. "I suggest," Saraxa said clearly, "that when people refuse to sell their ancestral water rights and then mysteriously fall ill from water contamination, questions arise naturally. Correlation without causation, Thorne countered. But let's not dwell on unproven accusations. I came here to offer solutions. Here it comes, Rowan thought. Aquafarian proposes a 10% rate reduction for basic water access, Thorne announced. Additionally, we'll establish a fund for families affected by the recent contaminations, pending investigation results. It was a decent offer, Rowan admitted. Enough to ease immediate pressure without changing the fundamental structure. Several audience members were nodding. That's generous, Mira said, her tone suggesting otherwise. Lord Carter, as Earth's representative, what's your view? I think, Rowan said carefully, that Zephyria deserves partnership, not patronage. Archon Thorne speaks of rate reductions. But who determines those rates? He mentions investigation. But who conducts it? Are you suggesting Aquafarian can't be trusted? Thorne's voice carried a dangerous edge. I'm suggesting trust requires transparency. Rowan pulled out his datapad, projecting information for all to see. Would Aquafarian be willing to open its books, allow public monitoring of its facilities, share real-time data on water reserves? The hall fell silent. Thorne's expression cycled through surprise, anger, and calculation in the space of heartbeats. That's unprecedented. No corporation could function with such exposure. No corporation with something to hide, Siraxa added sweetly. This is ambush journalism, Thorne stood, his composure cracking. I came here in good faith. You came here to offer scraps while hoarding resources, Rowan interrupted, also standing. We have satellite evidence of hidden storage facilities, chemical purchase records suggesting massive overproduction. You're creating artificial scarcity. Archon. Prove it, Thorne snarled. Gladly. Rowan nodded to Trix, who projected the accumulated evidence for all to see. Shipping manifests, satellite images, financial analyses. 500 million liters, minimum, sitting in desert bunkers while children ration water by the spoonful. The audience erupted. Questions, shouts, camera flashes. Thorne's security moved closer, but palace guards matched them. Lies and speculation, Thorne declared, but his voice lacked conviction. Then prove us wrong, Siraxa challenged. Open your facilities to inspection. Show us empty bunkers. Demonstrate your innocence. Thorne looked between them, and Rowan saw the moment he realized he'd been outmaneuvered. The marriage announcement hadn't been a weakness to exploit it, had been bait, drawing him into a public forum where his usual tactics couldn't work. This isn't over, he said quietly, the words carrying promise of retribution. Then louder. For the cameras, Aquafarian will review these baseless accusations through proper legal channels. We remain committed to serving Zephyria's water needs. He left with as much dignity as he could muster, his security forming a protective bubble. The moment he was gone, the hall exploded into chaos. Well, Mira said brightly, that went well. I especially liked the part where he threatened you. Very subtle. We've made an enemy, Siraxa said quietly. We already had one, Rowan corrected. Now everyone knows it. The rest of the reception passed in a blur of questions, congratulations, and veiled warnings from various nobles about the wisdom of antagonizing Aquafarian. Through it all, Siraxa and Rowan maintained their facade of unity, presenting a united front that even Rowan was starting to believe. Later, as the last guest departed and servants cleaned the hall, they found themselves alone on a balcony overlooking the city. He'll retaliate, Siraxa said. Probably. Are you prepared for that? Rowan thought about it. His career was likely over. He'd made an enemy of one of the most powerful corporations in known space. He was fake engaged to an Empress, and real engaged in a fight he couldn't win through conventional means. You know what, he said finally. I think I am. Siraxa smiled, a real smile that transformed her face. Good, because I have a confession. You're actually married already. No, she turned to face him fully. The night at the bar I wasn't drunk. Rowan's heart skipped, but he kept his expression neutral. I know. Her eyes widened slightly. You know, I suspected. You sobered up too quickly, played the media too well. Plus, Trix analyzed the video. Your movements were too coordinated for someone supposedly that intoxicated. And you went along with it anyway. Seemed rude to call out an Empress on her schemes. Plus, I was curious where it would lead. She laughed, the sound bright in the evening air. You continue to surprise me. Rowan Carter. Likewise, Your Majesty. So what was the real plan? Find someone outside the system. Someone with Earth connections but no local loyalties. Test their character, their capabilities. If they passed, recruit them for exactly what we just did, expose Aquiferian publicly, in a way they couldn't dismiss or suppress. And if I'd failed your test, then you'd have had a story about saving a drunk Empress and gone home none the wiser. She studied him. But you didn't fail. You exceeded every expectation. Happy to help, Rowan said dryly. Though next time, maybe just send a job offer. Where's the fun in that? Her expression grew serious. But now we're committed. This engagement story has taken on a life of its own. We'll need to maintain it until the water crisis is resolved. I can think of worse fates than being fake engaged to you. Flatterer, but she smiled. We make a good team. We do, Rowan agreed, then yawned. Sorry. Overthrowing corporate monopolies is exhausting. Go rest. Tomorrow we start the real work, those public forums. Building coalition support. Keeping pressure on Aquiferian. As Rowan turned to leave, she called after him. Thank you for trusting me, even when you knew I was deceiving you. You were trying to save your people, he said simply. Hard to fault that. He made his way back to his quarters, mind racing with plans and possibilities. They'd won the first skirmish, but the war was just beginning. Archon Thorn wouldn't forget today's humiliation, and Aquiferian had resources beyond imagination. But they also had something Thorn didn't expect: a fake engagement that was becoming a real partnership, public support growing by the hour, and the kind of momentum that could change worlds. Trix, he said as he entered his room. Start monitoring all Aquiferian communications. Flag anything suspicious. Already on it, boss. Also, you have 17 marriage proposals from various nobles who think you're now available since the engagement is fake. Want me to decline them all? What? How do they know? Never mind. Yes, decline them all. Even the one offering 3 moons and a small fleet, especially that one. As he prepared for bed, Rowan reflected on the strange turns his life had taken. He'd come to Zephyria to negotiate water rights. Instead, he'd become part of a revolution disguised as a romance, taking on one of the most powerful corporations in space with nothing but truth, clever media manipulation, and an Empress who was far more dangerous than any drunken bar patron. His mother had always said he couldn't leave well enough alone. For once, he was glad she was right. The explosion happened at dawn. Rowan woke to the sound of alarms and Trix's urgent voice. Boss, we have a problem. The main desalination plant just went up. 17 workers injured. Main processing unit completely destroyed. He was out of bed and pulling on clothes before his brain fully engaged. Sabotage. Unknown, but the timing is suspicious. It's Aquiferian's newest facility. The one we specifically mentioned had excess X74 catalyst. Saraxa's voice came through his comm. Meet me in the Situation Room. Now. The Situation Room was chaos-controlled. Military officials, emergency responders, and advisors clustered around holographic displays showing the burning facility. Saraxa stood at the center, still in sleeping clothes but radiating authority. Report, she commanded as Rowan entered. Explosion originated in the catalyst storage area, General Caravan reported. Secondary explosions followed. The plant is completely offline. At current rationing, we have 6 days of water reserves for the capital. Casualties. 17 injured, 3 critical. No deaths yet. Thank the stars for small mercies, Siraxa murmured. 'Cause Aquiferian is claiming equipment failure due to poor maintenance by local staff. Another official said. They're already spinning it as evidence that Xwire workers can't handle advanced technology safely. Of course they are, Rowan muttered. Siraxa's eyes found his. You don't think it was an accident? The same day after we publicly challenged them, the exact facility we highlighted. Either Archon Thorn has the worst timing in the galaxy, or he's sending a message. Siraxa turned back to the displays. General Ven, I want our best investigators on scene. If this was sabotage, I want proof. With respect, Your Majesty, the general said carefully. Aquiferian controls the facility. They're already restricting access. Then we make it a public health inspection. Safety evaluation. Whatever legal framework gets our people inside. She paused, thinking. Rowan, can your Earth contacts help neutral observers? I'll make some calls. The next hours blurred together. Rowan worked his communication channels while Siraxa coordinated the emergency response. The media, predictably, went insane. Aquiferian's PR machine was in full swing, painting the explosion as tragic proof that the monopoly needed to maintain control for safety reasons. They're good, Mira admitted, when she arrived with fresh intelligence. Already 3 major networks are running with their narrative. Inexperienced locals cause disaster, plays better than corporation destroys own facility to make a point. What about the workers' testimonies? Rowan asked. Surely someone saw something. Funny thing about that, Mira's expression darkened. The 3 workers who were nearest the explosion point, they've all been transferred to an Aquiferian medical facility for specialized treatment. No outside contact allowed. They're isolating witnesses, Siraxa said flatly. Or ensuring they don't survive to become witnesses, Rowan added grimly. The room fell silent at that. The game had shifted from corporate maneuvering to something deadlier. Your Majesty, Grand Marshal Kethnal entered, his military bearing rigid with barely contained anger. This attack demands a military response. Let me seize the facilities, ensure they're properly defended, and give Aquiferian excuse to call in their own security forces. Siraxa shook her head. No, we stick to the plan. Legal pressure, public opinion, economic alternatives. Your plan got 17 people hurt. Nell's composure cracked. Your human pet schemes have provoked them to violence. Careful, Marshal. Siraxa's voice carried warning. You forget yourself. I forget nothing, Your Majesty, including who truly serves Zyre's interests. He stormed out, leaving tension thick in his wake. He's not entirely wrong, Rowan said quietly. We did provoke this. No. Siraxa's denial was fierce. They chose violence. We chose truth. There's a difference. But Rowan could see the doubt in her eyes. The weight of those 17 injuries on her shoulders. The day progressed with frustrating lack of progress. Every attempt to access the destroyed facility met with legal obstacles. The injured workers remained mysteriously incommunicado. Public opinion began shifting back toward Aquiferian's narrative. We need a new approach, Rowan said during a brief break. He and Siraxa had retreated to a private balcony, away from the constant crisis management. What do you suggest? We can't prove sabotage without access? We can't get access without proof. It's perfectly circular. Then we go around it. Rowan activated tricks. Show her what you found. A holographic display materialized. I've been analyzing communication patterns around Aquiferian facilities. There's something interesting happening at their deep desert storage sites. The display showed heat signatures, vehicle movements, unusual activity patterns. They're moving the hidden water reserves, Siraxa breathed. Why? My guess, they're preparing for a siege, Rowan said. Cut off official supply. Let the crisis deepen, then emerge as saviors with their private reserves. Sell them at whatever price they want. Or use them as leverage to force complete capitulation, Saraxa added. Give us total control, or watch your people die of thirst. Bastards, Mira said, having joined them silently. Brilliant bastards, but bastards nonetheless. We need those reserves, Saraxa said. If we could prove they exist, show them to the people. Breaking into heavily guarded corporate facilities would be war, Rowan pointed out. Then we don't break in, Mira said slowly, a grin spreading across her face. We get invited. They looked at her expectantly. Archon Thorn has a weakness. His ego. He loves showing off, proving he's smarter than everyone else. She pulled up a file on her pad. Every year, he hosts a desert race for corporate elites, death-defying speeds through the worst terrains Etheria has to offer. And guess what's coming up in 3 days? The Scorched Earth Rally, Saraxa murmured. But that's invitation only. Good thing you're engaged to someone Archon would love to humiliate publicly, Mira said cheerfully. Rowan enters the race. We use it as cover to get close to the storage facilities. That's insane, Rowan said. That's perfect, Saraxa countered. Archon won't be able to resist the chance to beat you personally. His pride will override his caution. I don't know how to race through alien deserts. You'll learn, Saraxa smiled. I'll teach you. You race. How do you think I knew to fake being drunk at a zero-G bar? I've been sneaking out for underground races since I was 16. Mother still doesn't know. Rowan stared at her, once again reassessing everything he thought he knew about the Empress. The next 2 days passed in a whirlwind of preparation. Saraxa taught Rowan the basics of desert racing, while Mira worked on getting him entered in the rally. The official story was that Lord Carter wanted to prove humans could match Zir courage. Archon, predictably, took the bait. He actually sent a personal message, Trix reported. Quote, I look forward to showing Lord Carter that some territories are better left to their betters. He really doesn't like you. Good, Rowan said, adjusting the controls of the practice vehicle. Angry people make mistakes. Saraxa slid into the navigator's seat. Remember, desert racing isn't about speed. It's about reading the terrain, anticipating changes. The sand here is alive. You keep saying that. What does it mean? You'll see. She activated the vehicle's systems. Let's take a real run. There's something I want to show you. They headed out from the palace's private tracks into the open desert. As the city fell behind, Rowan began to understand what Saraxa meant. The sands did seem alive, shifting in patterns that defied wind patterns, creating obstacles and opportunities in equal measure. There, Saraxa pointed to a distant rock formation. Head for that! Rowan pushed the vehicle harder, getting a feel for how it responded to the changing terrain. The exhilaration was unexpected. The speed, the danger, the way Saraxa laughed when he took a dune at just the right angle to get airborne. They reached the formation as the sun began to set. Saraxa led him up a carved path to a cave entrance. What is this place? A reminder, she said, activating a small light. The cave walls were covered in ancient carvings, images of water flowing freely across what was now desert. This was an ocean once, Saraxa explained. Before the climate shifts, before the corporations, my ancestors carved these to remember. She traced a particular symbol. This means water memory. The desert remembers when it was sea. It's beautiful, Rowan said softly. It's why we fight. Not just for today's water, but for the memory of abundance, the possibility of it returning. She turned to him. I brought you here because I wanted you to understand. This isn't just about politics or economics. It's about survival of memory itself. The intimacy of the moment caught Rowan off guard. In the cave's soft light, with ancient memories surrounding them, the fake engagement felt suddenly very real. Saraxa, he began. We should head back, she said quickly. Tomorrow you need to register for the race. But she didn't move. And neither did he. The moment stretched, possibilities hanging between them like suspended water drops. Then her comm chimed, breaking the spell. Reality crashed back. "There's been another incident," she said, reading the message. "A settlement in the northern wastes. Their entire water supply has been cut off." They raced back through darkening sands, the earlier moment forgotten in the face of new crisis. By the time they reached the palace, the full scope was clear. 3 settlements, water supplies severed, thousands at risk. "It's starting," General Venn reported. "Aquifarian is tightening the noose." "Redirect reserves from the capital," Saraxa ordered. "That will cut our emergency supply to 4 days," Counselor Mirax warned. "Then we have 4 days to solve this." The war room erupted in arguments about resource allocation, military options, diplomatic channels. Through it all, Rowan watched Saraxa manage the chaos with remarkable grace, even as the pressure mounted visibly on her shoulders. Later, exhausted, they found themselves again on the familiar balcony. The city below showed signs of strain, longer lines at public water stations, nervous energy in the streets. "We're losing," Saraxa said quietly. "We're not beaten," Rowan corrected. "The race is in 2 days. We get evidence of those hidden reserves, and everything changes. And if Archon expects the gambit if it's a trap, then we spring it and see who gets caught." He managed a tired smile. "Besides, I have an excellent navigator." "Flatterer," she murmured, but smiled back. "You know this is probably suicide racing against professionals on their home terrain while trying to conduct espionage. Tuesday in the diplomatic corps, remember." She laughed despite everything. "You're either very brave or very stupid. Why not both?" "Indeed." She was quiet for a moment. "Rowan, in the cave earlier, Alarms blared across the palace. They both jerked to attention as guards rushed past. "What now?" Rowan groaned. Vera appeared, out of breath. "Your Majesty, Lord Carter Grand Marshal Nall has mobilized his loyal units. He's moving to seize the remaining Aquifarian facilities by force." "That fool," Saraxa snarled. "He'll start a war." They ran for the Situation Room, all thoughts of caves and moments forgotten. On the displays, military units were indeed moving toward Aquifarian facilities. "Get me now, now!" Saraxa commanded. The Marshal's face appeared on screen, rigid with determination. "Your Majesty, I'm doing what you lack the courage to do. You're committing an act of war. I'm saving our people." "Your soft approach has failed. The human schemes have failed. Military action is all that remains." "Stand down, Marshal. That is a direct order." "I no longer recognize your authority in this matter. The Military Council has voted. For the good of Zir, we act." The transmission cut. "He's staged a coup," General Venn said quietly. "Not against the throne, but against your policies." "Can you stop him?" "My forces are split. Some agree with him. It would be messy." "Civil conflict while facing corporate stranglehold," Rowan said. Archon couldn't have planned it better himself. A horrible thought struck him. He activated tricks. Priority scan all communications between Nall and external sources over the last week. "On it?" Oh no." "What?" Saraxa demanded. "Encrypted communications between Nall and Aquifarian subsidiaries. Small payments to accounts linked to his staff. Not enough to be obvious bribes, but enough to suggest influence," Saraxa finished. "He's been compromised. Or he's letting himself be used because it aligns with his goals," Rowan suggested. "Either way, Archon wins." On the displays, the first military units were approaching Aquifarian facilities. Corporate security was mobilizing in response. In minutes, shooting would start. "We need to stop this," Saraxa said. "Ideas." "Go over Nall's head," Mira suggested. "Direct appeal to the troops. Broadcast from where he controls military communications." "The race," Rowan said suddenly. "Move it up. Tomorrow instead of 2 days. Make it a rally for peace, not just sport. Get everyone watching that instead of the military movements. Archon won't agree to change the date. He will if we make it worth his while. Rowan pulled up a map. Look where Nell's forces are heading. Now, look at the race route. We can modify it to go right past the standoff. Live coverage of corporate races alongside military tension. He won't be able to resist the drama. And while everyone's watching the race, we find those water reserves and broadcast their location to everyone. Hard to justify military action when the crisis is revealed as manufactured. Siraxa studied the map, mind racing through possibilities. It's insane, brilliant, but insane. Our specialty, apparently. She nodded decisively. Do it. Mira, can you sell this to the networks? Honey, I could sell ice to polar bears, leave it to me. As Mira rushed out, Siraxa turned to General Ven. Slow Nell down. I don't care how. Equipment failures, communication problems, sudden inspections. Buy us time. I'll do what I can, Your Majesty. One by one, the room emptied until only Rowan and Siraxa remained. She looked exhausted, the weight of crisis etched in every line of her body. We're gambling everything on a race, she said. No, Rowan corrected. We're gambling everything on the truth. The race is just how we deliver it. And if we lose, then we gave Archon Thorn the worst day of his life before we lost. That has to count for something. Despite everything, she smiled. You're a very strange diplomat, Rowan Carter. And you're a very strange Empress. I think that's why this works. This? He gestured between them. Whatever this is. She stepped closer, and for a moment, Rowan thought she might kiss him. Then she seemed to catch herself, stepping back. We should rest. Tomorrow will be insane. I was going to say decisive, but insane works too. As they parted ways, Rowan caught her hand. We'll get through this. Together. She squeezed back. Together. Walking to his quarters, Rowan reflected on how much had changed since he'd stumbled into that bar. He'd come to negotiate water rights and ended up in the middle of a revolution, a corporate war, and now a military crisis. And somewhere along the way, a fake engagement had become something else. Trix, he said quietly. What are the odds we survive tomorrow? Calculating. Approximately 23.7%. But then, you've always beaten the odds before. First time for everything. That's the spirit, should I prepare your will. Just make sure all our evidence is backed up and ready for broadcast. If we don't make it, at least the truth will. Already done. Also, Rowan, for what it's worth, I think you're doing the right thing. Thanks, Trix. He stood at his window, looking out at the city that might have water for only days more. Somewhere out there, Nell's forces were moving toward conflict. Archon was probably planning their deaths. The desert held secrets that could save or damn them all. And in less than 24 hours, he'd be racing through that desert with the Empress he was pretending to love, but might actually be falling for, trying to prevent a war while exposing a conspiracy. Should have minded my own business in that bar, he murmured. But he smiled as he said it, because despite everything, the danger, the complexity, the sheer impossibility of their situation, he wouldn't change a thing. Tomorrow would bring racing and revelations, truth and consequences. Tonight, he had work to do. Trix, pull up everything we have on desert racing techniques. If I'm going to risk my life, I'm at least going to be good at it. That's my human always preparing for doom with style. Outside, the stars watched impassively as Zephyria balanced on the edge of catastrophe. And in the palace, two people who'd started as strangers prepared to risk everything for a chance at justice. The race was on in more ways than one. The morning of the Scorched Earth rally dawned blood red, the sky painted with dust storms on the horizon. Rowan stood in the racing hangar, trying not to think about the 17 different ways he could die in the next few hours. Nervous, Siraxa asked. appearing beside him in a racing suit that somehow made her look even more regal. Terrified, he admitted. But it's a productive kind of terror. She smiled and handed him a helmet. I had this specially made. Latest safety tech, integrated comms, and Trix-compatible systems. And probably a tracker so you can find my body when I crash. That too. Her smile faded. Rowan, you don't have to do this. We can find another way. No, we can't. Nal's forces are 12 hours from the facilities. The water supplies are failing. This is our shot. He put on the helmet, testing the systems. Besides, I have the best navigator in the Empire. Flatterer. Realist. Mira burst into the hangar, camera crew in tow. The networks are eating this up. Royal romance races against time. Love in the fast lane. I'm particularly proud of speeding toward justice. Please tell me you didn't actually use that last one, Rowan groaned. Too late. Also, Archon just arrived. He brought his personal racing team and what looks like enough firepower to invade a small moon. Through the hangar's open doors, they could see Archon's convoy, military-grade vehicles, professional racers, and the man himself, standing like a general surveying a battlefield. He's not taking any chances, Saraxa observed. Good. Neither are we. Rowan activated Trix. You ready for this? Born ready well. Compiled ready. I've hacked into 17 different satellite networks, prepared 43 contingency broadcast protocols, and composed your eulogy just in case. It's very moving. Your confidence is overwhelming. I also calculated optimal race routes based on wind patterns, sand density, and proximity to the hidden facilities. You'll want to take the Serpent's Spine passage at kilometer 47. The Serpent's Spine is a death trap, Saraxa protested. No one successfully navigated it in years. Which is why Archon won't expect it, Trix replied cheerfully. Also, why the nearest water facility is only 2 kilometers from its exit point. Minimal security, because who'd be crazy enough to come from that direction? We would, apparently, Rowan said. The starting line was chaos-controlled. 30 racing teams, hundreds of media drones, and thousands of spectators, both physical and virtual. The modified route took them past the military standoff, where Nal's forces waited in tense formation opposite Aquiferian security. Archon approached their vehicle, his smile sharp as a blade. Lord Carter, I'm surprised you showed. Most humans would have found an excuse to withdraw. Most humans don't have what I have, Rowan replied evenly. And what's that? A reason to win. Archon's smile widened. We'll see. I do hope you survive the race. It would be unfortunate if something happened before we could finish our water negotiations. The threat was barely veiled, but before Rowan could respond, Saraxa stepped between them. Archon, I trust your team will race with honor. As much honor as the desert demands. Your Majesty. He bowed mockingly. May the best man win. As he walked away, Saraxa muttered, I really hate that man. Join the club, we have jackets. Despite everything, she laughed, ready to make history. Or die trying. They took their positions in the vehicle. Around them, engines roared to life. The starting signal would come in minutes. Remember, Saraxa said, running through final checks. Trust me completely out there. When I say turn, turn. When I say jump, don't ask how high, just do it. I trust you, Rowan said simply. Something passed over her face. I know. That's what terrifies me. The starting flare shot into the sky. 30 vehicles launched forward into the desert, and the race was on. The first section was relatively straightforward, packed sand and marked routes. Rowan kept them in the middle of the pack, getting a feel for how the other racers moved. Archon's team was ahead, setting a brutal pace. Sandstorm approaching from the east, Saraxa reported. Natural, not manufactured. It'll hit in 20 minutes. Can we use it? If we're crazy enough, take the ridge path when we hit marker 15. Rowan did as instructed, their vehicle climbing a narrow ridge that put them above the main pack. Below, other racers fought for position on the standard route. Why aren't they following? Because this ridge becomes a wind tunnel when the storm hits. One wrong move and we're airborne in the bad way. And the right moves? Trust me. The storm hit like a physical blow. Visibility dropped to meters. Wind howled like a living thing. And the vehicle bucked and fought against Rowan's control. Left, hard left, Siraxa shouted. He yanked the wheel. The vehicle skidded, teetered on two wheels, then found purchase on a path he couldn't even see. Straight for 10 seconds, then right, 45 degrees. They danced through the storm, Siraxa calling out directions with preternatural accuracy. Rowan stopped trying to understand and simply reacted, trusting her completely. Now full speed. He floored it. The vehicle shot forward, hit something that might have been a ramp, and went airborne. For a heart-stopping moment, they flew blind through the storm. Then, they burst through the other side, landing hard but intact on the desert floor. Behind them, the storm raged on, hiding the rest of the pack. How? Rowan gasped. I've been racing these storms since I was a teenager, Siraxa grinned. Also, I may have studied this particular route extensively while planning escape routes from boring palace functions. You're amazing. I know. Turn left at that rock formation. They were in third place now, with Archon's team still ahead, but within reach. The course wound through increasingly challenging terrain, past ancient ruins and over crystallized dunes that sang beneath their wheels. Serpent's spine in 5 kilometers, Trix reported. Also, I'm picking up some interesting communications from Archon's vehicle. Want to hear? Play it. Archon's voice, crackling with static. Team 3, move to intercept. Make it look like an accident. He's going to have us rammed, Siraxa snarled. Then we better not be where he expects. Rowan spotted the approaching vehicle in his mirrors. Hold on. He waited until the last second. Then, hit the brakes while turning hard. Their pursuer shot past, unable to adjust in time, and plowed into a sand dune in an explosion of crystallized particles. One down, Rowan said grimly. Look ahead. The serpent's spine rose before them, a twisted corridor of rock that looked like it had been carved by a mad god. The entrance was barely wide enough for their vehicle. Last chance to take the safe route, Siraxa said. Safe is overrated. They plunged into the spine. It was like racing through a nightmare. The walls pressed close, the path twisted impossibly, and half the time, Rowan was driving on surfaces that weren't quite horizontal. Siraxa's directions came rapid fire, leaving no room for thought or fear. Up the wall, 30 degrees. Now drop left, thread between those pillars. The vehicle's systems screamed warnings. Paint scraped off against stone. Once, they drove completely upside down for several seconds, held in place only by momentum and prayer. Almost through, Siraxa said. But Rowan. What? We're about to have company. In the mirrors, impossible as it seemed. Archon's personal vehicle had followed them in. His professional driver was threading the same impossible path, gaining ground. He's insane, Rowan breathed. He's desperate. He knows we're heading for the facility. They burst from the spine onto open desert. In the distance, disguised by holographic camouflage but visible to those who knew where to look, was one of Aquifarian's secret water facilities. Trix, start scanning. Already on it, and boss, we've got bigger problems. Military vehicles approaching from the north. Some of Nal's forces have broken off from the standoff. To stop us? Unknown, but they'll be here in minutes. Archon's vehicle was gaining. His driver was simply better, and they had the superior machine. But they needed to catch up. And Rowan had one advantage: he was willing to do something completely stupid. Siraxa, do you trust me? What, yes, but... Then hold on. He turned directly toward the facility, abandoning any pretense of following the race route. Archon followed, as expected. But Rowan wasn't heading for the main entrance. The camouflage field, he said. It'll have a power source. You're going to crash us into critical infrastructure. Only a little. They hit the field generator at full speed. The holographic disguise shattered like glass, revealing the massive facility beneath. But more importantly, the impact sent their vehicle tumbling, rolling end over end, in a spectacular crash that looked absolutely fatal. Except Rowan had angled it perfectly. They rolled down a sand dune, the vehicle's safety systems engaging, and came to rest upside down but intact. "Are we dead?" Siraxa asked. Disappointed. "A little. Death would be less painful than this." They extracted themselves from the wreckage just as Archon's vehicle screeched to a halt. He emerged, fury radiating from every line of his body. "You suicidal fool, do you know what you've done?" "Exposed your illegal water hoarding," Rowan suggested, gesturing to the now visible facility. "Trix, please tell me you're broadcasting." "Live to 17 networks." Trix confirmed through their helmet comms. "The whole Empire can see the facility. Scanning shows, oh my, conservative estimate 800 million liters in storage." "You can't prove anything," Archon snarled. "This is a strategic reserve for emergency use." "Then why hide it?" Siraxa demanded. "Why not register it with Imperial authorities?" "Because bureaucrats like you would waste it on the undeserving masses." There it was, the mask finally slipping. "Undeserving," Rowan stepped forward. "Children dying of thirst are undeserving. The weak die, the strong prosper, that's nature." "That's greed," Siraxa corrected. "And it ends now." The military vehicles arrived, surrounding them in a cloud of dust. Soldiers emerged, weapons drawn. But instead of Nal's loyalists, it was General Ven. "Your Majesty," she saluted. "We've been monitoring the broadcast. Orders." "Secure the facility," Siraxa commanded. "Full audit. Immediate distribution to critical areas." "You can't," Archon reached for a weapon, but froze as a dozen rifles tracked him. "This is theft. I'll have you all in court." "I look forward to it," Siraxa smiled. "Especially the part where we discuss the poisoned settlements, the sabotaged desalination plant, and your communications with Marshal Nal." "Speaking of which," Mira appeared from one of the military vehicles, camera still rolling. "Nal's forces have stood down. Seems his soldiers weren't keen on fighting once they learned about the hidden water. Funny how threat of dying from thirst changes perspectives." Archon looked between them, calculating. Then his expression shifted to something crueler. "You think you've won? I own judges, politicians, media empires. I'll be free in days, and then—" "Then nothing," Rowan interrupted. "Because while you were chasing us through the desert, my associates on Earth were buying your company." Silence fell like a hammer. What Archon's voice was strangled. "Turns out, when your stock price crashes due to scandal, and your board sees evidence of criminal activity, they become very amenable to buyout offers." Rowan pulled up his comm, showing the confirmation. "Neptune Hydro now owns 51% of Aquiferian. You're fired, by the way." "You can't. This isn't possible." "You forgot something," Siraxa said. "You thought this was about Zaire versus humans, about maintaining your monopoly through division. But Rowan and we're proof that cooperation is stronger than exploitation." "Also," Rowan added, "you really shouldn't have threatened her people. She takes that personally." "We take that personally," Siraxa corrected, taking Rowan's hand. Archon was led away, still sputtering about lawyers and revenge. The soldiers began securing the facility, preparing to open the reserves that could save thousands. "So," Mira said, camera finally lowering, "about this engagement, still fake, or—" Rowan and Siraxa looked at each other. They were covered in sand, bruised from the crash, exhausted from the race. And yet— "I don't know," Siraxa said softly. "Rowan, what do you think?" "I think," he said carefully, "that I came to Zephyria to negotiate water rights. Instead, I found something worth fighting for. Someone worth fighting beside." "That's not an answer," she pointed out. Then, how about this? He pulled her close, aware of the cameras, the soldiers, the whole empire watching. Saraxa Talvrex, would you go on a real date with me? One where neither of us is pretending to be drunk or engaged? She laughed, bright and genuine. Rowan Carter, are you asking me out after we just toppled a corporate empire and prevented a civil war? Seemed like the right time. You're impossible. So is that a yes? Instead of answering, she kissed him. The desert wind whirled around them, carrying the sound of cheers from the watching soldiers. I'll take that as a yes, Rowan said when they finally broke apart. Shut up and kiss me again. He did. Later, much later, after the water had been distributed and the immediate crisis passed. They stood together in the palace watching the sunset. You know, Saraxa said, we still have to deal with the aftermath. Trials, reconstruction, diplomatic negotiations. I know. It won't be easy. There'll be pushback. Other corporations trying to fill the void. Political complications. I know. And we'll have to figure out what we actually are to each other without the pressure of fake engagement. I know, he smiled. But hey, we exposed a conspiracy, prevented a war, and saved a planet. How hard can a real relationship be? She laughed. With us, probably very... Worth it, though. Yes, she agreed. Worth it. Trix's voice interrupted their moment. Hate to intrude, but there's something you should know. Remember how Saraxa's drunk act at the bar was all planned? Yes, Rowan said slowly. Well, I've been analyzing the footage, cross-referencing with testimony from bar patrons. Saraxa wasn't just randomly there that night. Trix, Saraxa warned. She'd been watching you for weeks, attending every public negotiation session, reading all your reports. The bar wasn't random, she knew you went there to unwind after difficult days. Rowan turned to Saraxa, eyebrow raised. Stalking me, Your Majesty. Research, she corrected, blushing beneath her fur. I needed to know if you were the right person for the job. And, well, you did save the planet, so clearly my judgment was sound. Your judgment or your taste in men? Both, she admitted. Though I didn't expect. To fall for your own trap? Something like that. He kissed her again, soft and sweet. For what it's worth, I'm glad you were stalking me. Research. Sure, research. They stood together as night fell over Zephyria, the city lights reflecting off the newly flowing water channels. The crisis wasn't over. It never really was, but for now, they had each other, and they had hope. So, Mira's voice came from the doorway, where she'd been shamelessly eavesdropping. When's the real wedding? Out, Saraxa and Rowan shouted in unison. Mira left, laughing. I'm going with spring wedding on Earth, fall ceremony on Zyre. The networks will love it. We could elope, Rowan suggested. Find a nice quiet asteroid somewhere. Don't tempt me, Saraxa leaned against him. Though Mother would hunt us across the galaxy. Worth it. Ask me again in a year. Deal! As the stars emerged in the desert sky, Rowan reflected on the strange path that had brought him here. A bar fight, a fake engagement, a corporate conspiracy, and somewhere along the way, real love. No regrets, Saraxa asked, reading his mood. Only one. Oh, I never did get to finish that whiskey at the bar. She laughed, pulling him inside. Come on. I happen to know where the palace keeps the good stuff. And this time, no one has to pretend to be drunk. Though if you wanted to recreate the scene where you called me swooshy. Don't push it, Lord Carter. As you wish, Your Majesty. They walked together into the palace, hand in hand, ready to face whatever came next. Behind them, the desert bloomed with new life as water flowed freely once more. And somewhere in the digital sphere, Trix was already composing wedding invitations. Because some AIs just couldn't help themselves. The end. Or rather, the beginning.